It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan giving us a very scenic background today. Very gracious of you. Where are you at right now?
I'm in Washington Square Park in Mobile, which is just down the street from where we're staying here for the Senior Bowl. And I kind of thought I would take this opportunity to just kind of like show you guys around. It is a absolutely beautiful place. This is just a little square park, but I don't know how much of the buildings you can see behind me, but it's very kind of old South feel. A lot of like buildings with columns, and it's really it's quite beautiful. It's very scenic. This is about maybe 2 blocks from the, maybe 3 blocks from the Mardi Gras parade route, which will be starting, I believe, tonight. They go hard for Mardi Gras here. So if I can get this set back up somewhere stable, there we go. Maybe. I really like it here in Mobile, man. It's a great city. It's a great time, and I've really enjoyed my stay. So I thought I would just give them little love here on the channel.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Where does it rank for you in terms of your underrated places? Because I agree, Mobile's awesome.
It's one of the most underrated places in the country. I've literally never heard of anyone being like, "Oh, I went to Mobile, Alabama, and it was great." Oh, first of all, just like I went to Mobile, I get. You would never think that. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. The people are great. The food, oh my God, I just keep eating. I had ribs for lunch today. It was amazing. So next week you will see me in the podcast on a treadmill. Actually, this is what's going to have to happen after this week here in Mobile. But no, it's the weather's beautiful here. I don't know what it's like at home, but it's about 65 degrees and sunny right now.
Yeah.
And February 2nd, I woke up this morning to a bunch of people talking about the groundhog, and I'm like, spring. It's like been here. I don't know what y'all talking about.
Yeah, no precipitation here, but that's all I'll give it in terms of any credit for the weather that we got going on right now. Alan, every time that I look at myself on camera, I'm reminded that Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Have you gotten any? What has been the reaction in your life to the mustache? Like, are people telling you that it looks good? Are they telling you you're an idiot? What has been the feedback?
People are telling me I'm an idiot in my daily life regardless, but it has nothing to do with my facial hair. No, surprisingly, the only people that I've gotten negative reaction from are my niece and nephew, because they're just, they would poke fun at regardless what I got going on. But Jackson, my nephew, calls me beardless man and just like points and laughs. And then Amelia would just say that she doesn't like it and she wants the beard back. So that's the extent of that. On the negative side, I'm surprised there hasn't been more negative reaction, but a lot of people seem to dig it. A lot of people were tagging me in the picture the Steelers put up of Arthur Smith today, saying, "Can we get a side by side?"
Do people like in your did they know what you were doing, or are they just like operating under the assumption that you think that looks good?
Yeah, I think so. Because like I walked upstairs the first time that my mom saw it, she was just like, "Oh wow, why?" And I was like, "Oh, the Steelers hired Arthur Smith," and then she made it seem like that was completely normal of me to do. Like, so yeah.
Bless her.
Yeah. But Alan, I want to talk about Arthur Smith more here today because they made this move official today and basically coincided. So I'm sitting there getting a tattoo finished, and I have my phone in my hand, and I open up Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it at this point in time in 2024, and see that the Steelers made this move official at the same time that I see Adam Schefter post that the New Orleans Saints are working to hire Klint Kubiak following the Super Bowl as their offensive coordinator, which then we got Steelers fans once again just restart the conversation about everybody that wanted Klint Kubiak. But then I saw you post about Saints fans being upset about Klint Kubiak being the offensive coordinator. Like, and you said this before, I completely agree. No one is happy with whoever their offensive coordinator is.
And I think the Saints fans have a very similar situation where I think a lot of Saints fans don't like Dennis Allen and don't think he's very good. And so I think a lot of the sentiment that was negative in response to Arthur Smith being hired is mostly just people that didn't want Mike Tomlin to be back and decided they were going to hate whoever he hired because he hired them. Like the fact that Mike Tomlin picked this guy was then an indictment of this guy, no matter who it was for some people. And I think the Saints probably have some of the same stuff going on there. But yeah, it's everybody hates their offensive coordinator. But honestly, I don't think that are these guys going to be compared going forward. I don't know. We'll see. Very different kinds of offenses, very different very different guys. But I think it's pretty clear that the Saints' head start on Kubiak was significant, and that the Steelers were going to struggle to make up that ground. I mean, this report is coming out today. The Steelers can't talk to Kubiak until Monday. Like that's tough. I don't really see how a week from Monday. Sorry, I don't really see how, if the Saints are still talking to Kubiak and they're close to a deal right now, that the Steelers would have been able to change that a week and a half from now. Like, it just seems like because the Saints had that head start, the Steelers were still playing in the playoff game, which got delayed by a day. That I don't think that they were able to make up from that. And then, combined with the reports that there were other teams that were really interested in Arthur Smith and that he was ready to fly to Tampa to go interview for that job, who, by the way, they hired someone that I think is clearly an inferior candidate to Arthur Smith. And whether you like Arthur Smith or not, I mean, look around at some of the guys that got offensive coordinator jobs this year. I mean, and compare his resume to theirs. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, the Liam Cohen hire almost feels like that was specifically for Baker. Because they were in LA together and then Baker basically coming out and saying yesterday, like, him and his agent were waiting to see who the OC hired was before even like negotiating with them.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I just think there's, Arthur Smith has a good resume. And when you compare it to a lot of the other people that have been hired as offensive coordinators, John Idzik, like, what? I don't know. Like, there's been a number of, to me, just head scratching hires. Like Alex Van Pelt in New England. Like, I mean, he's the guy we talked about, like, that I thought the Steelers might interview, but I was thinking about him more as like a passing game coordinator type than an actual OC. I think the Steelers got a pretty good one compared to what was out there. Did they get the very best one? No, but I don't think they could have overcome the Saints' head start for Kubiak based on what we're hearing now. And I guess we'll see if Eric Bieniemy becomes actually available or not. The Commanders still don't seem like they know what they're doing. Dan Quinn looks like he's going to be the guy, but I haven't heard anything definitive about Bieniemy and that offense and what happens. And, if the Steelers are still waiting to see, they probably lose out on Arthur Smith at this point.
And I want to ask you a follow-up question based off that. Something that just popped in my mind was, so, you're talking about having teams having head starts. Are you okay with the way that the system is in terms of that interviewing process, like teams having head starts and teams being behind the 8 ball just because they made the playoffs?
The part of it that I don't like is that it disadvantages the coaches that go deep into the playoffs. I'm okay with teams that don't make the playoffs getting a head start on the coaching search process. I think that's one of the benefits
I meant as a
being,
whole. So that
that's one of the benefits of being bad. I think the Saints deserve to get a head start on the Steelers in the coaching search process. They were a worse team. Like, they should get to go to the front of the line. I'm okay with that. I don't like the way that, like, Klint Kubiak is being disadvantaged, right? If he had been available at the same time as all the other candidates, we talked about how rare that leverage is in this position, and the guys really don't turn down jobs because they're not usually offered in that type of way. Well, I think maybe a different system actually would give some of these coaches that kind of leverage where they could pick a job that they thought was best suited for them and that kind of thing. But I mean, his options at this point are going to be go to the Saints or stay in San Francisco. Like, he's going to get to the very end of the process, and that's all he's going to have left. Maybe he likes the Saints, and that's fine with him. But I think it kind of screws over those guys. And I don't really know that I have like a perfect solution that makes everything better. And before they had the rules differently and coaches couldn't hire before the Super Bowl, everyone just tampered with everybody. And so I don't know how you enforce the phone conversations of thousands and thousands of people. Like, it just becomes impossible at some point.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm not sure that it's a great system right now, but I don't know how to improve it. It's almost like my view on like politics, right? Like, I have no idea what solutions are, but I don't like the way things are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's vote out Goodell. That's a very popular platform, right? Like, we could run.
There we go.
That.
Mm-hmm. Alan, anything else on the OC stuff before? We got a lot of people that wanted to know about specific players that are down the Senior Bowl, and we didn't touch on a couple positions either. So wanted to get into some of that. But
one thing I'm interested to watch going forward about the OC stuff is just whether what the Steelers are going to do with the rest of their offensive coaching staff. That was not part of today's announcement. Is Mike Sullivan going to be back? Are they going to add like a passing game coordinator type? Mike Sullivan interviewed for the Saints, so it doesn't look like he's going to get that job. In addition to not getting the Raiders job, which was announced last night, they went with Cliff Kingsbury, who was another guy that was a potential pass game coordinator option. So was Liam Cohen. So was Alex Van Pelt. So those guys are kind of flying off the shelf right now. We'll see where things land. So I'm interested to see that. And also with the head coaches jobs all being filled and Mike Vrabel still being out there, with Arthur Smith here in Pittsburgh and the Steelers having had that role in the past, and I think really thrived with someone in that role in the past, and getting Brian Flores right back to a coordinator position when he did that last time. Man, my vision for like utilizing Mike Tomlin's popularity as like a Nick Saban-esque coaching rehab while also benefiting the Steelers seems like it could really work right now this offseason with a guy like Mike Vrabel.
Absolutely. I mean, I replied to somebody on Twitter saying that I'm going to keep beating the drum until he gets hired somewhere else. I quoted Adam Schefter and said, "Welcome to Pittsburgh, senior defensive assistant Mike Vrabel," and everybody was like, "Wait, are you actually hearing something?" I was like, "No, but I'm just going to keep saying this until somebody else hires him."
Why wouldn't you? And I mean, there aren't that many good jobs open right now. So, what's a better place than to come back to the place that you got your pro football career started? It's a good town, somewhere he's familiar with. He helped the Steelers get in the playoffs, so they're very comfortable paying him back a little bit for that favor, and he'll get to work with a guy like Art Smith that he's known for a long time, and maybe help his career along the way too. If he, with a really good defense, would certainly help Art's offense. I don't know. I see a lot of things to like about that. And man, and we talked about Arthur Smith being a former head coach being a potential benefit to Mike Tomlin. Holy heck, if it's Arthur Smith and Mike Vrabel,
yeah, absolutely. 3 former head coaches on one staff. And then, hey, I know that it's kind of been, I feel like some water's been thrown on the fire here with the whole Mike Munchak thing, but
I don't have any inside info here. I'm skeptical that he would want to do it as a full-time position coach, but you might be able to get him in as like an analyst or consultant or whatever you want to call it. Where,
like something like the Grudens are doing right now,
or like what Tom Moore does in Tampa Bay. How about that?
Okay.
As like as a comparison, where he's on the staff, doesn't necessarily have like an everyday, grind kind of role, but he's just a guy you keep around to lean on for advice and that kind of thing. I think something like that could be possible.
Yeah, and I think that would still be fully okay with Steelers fans. One, they wouldn't even understand what the heck he was actually doing on a regular basis, but his name would just be within the organization. I think that would be palatable for them. So
absolutely, maybe he could fix Mason Cole's snapping issues. That would be like enough. It's right there to sell me on the move.
Yeah. Alan, you mentioned about starting careers like Mike Vrabel did in Pittsburgh. A lot of kids that you've been around this week are starting their careers in Mobile, launch pad into the NFL. And there was 2 positions we haven't talked about yet. I've mentioned in the past, I believe to you, if not, it was for sure on the episode where Nick was on with me. Safety is a position where I'm more so circling for free agency as opposed to the draft, just because I really like the free agent class more so than the draft class coming in. Not to say there aren't some intriguing players down there, but what have you seen from the safety class that's been in Mobile? Is there a guy that you think fits what the Steelers are looking for next to Minkah Fitzpatrick? Because, there's a very good chance that you look at that safety room, could just be Minkah Fitzpatrick back next year from the guys that we saw this year.
I don't think it'll be that drastic. I expect Damontae Casey to be back because of his versatility and the way they like to use the 3 safeties. I think if they can upgrade on Keanu Neal in terms of a box safety, that's something that is probably more of a free agency job. I don't see a lot of just big hulking safeties in this draft class that I would think that you could pencil into that role. The one place I do think this draft is really good at is in terms of guys that are center field safeties, guys that are half field safeties, and guys that are like hybrid safety slot corners that can kind of do a little bit of everything. I wrote about one of those today on the site, and the video interview I did with him is one video up here on the YouTube channel, and that's Tykee Smith from Georgia. He spent the last 3 years in Georgia. One was hurt, and then but 2 years before that he was at West Virginia. He just fits every box. He is short. He's 5'9". Okay, he's not a big guy. He blitzes like Mike Hilton. He plays the run. He is extremely fast. He's 205 pounds. He's 5'9", 205. When Mike Hilton came out of Ole Miss, he was 5'8", 175. This guy runs well and is 30 pounds thicker than Mike Hilton, who was not a small defensive back. I think he really looks to me like the prototype for finally replacing a Mike Hilton, and also, being able to do, like, he can go play half field. So when they put a guy like that in, is it a traditional nickel? Is it the 3 safety nickel? Where's Minkah Fitzpatrick going to be? You can still give some of those question mark looks that they like out of the 3 safety thing, even with a guy that's a more traditional slot corner, because he has that versatility. He played free safety this whole week because they don't really play with a nickel all the time. And he looked really good at it. And he's played outside corner. He's too short to do that in the NFL, but he's got good coverage skills. And he's a 3rd or 4th round pick. So I think he's really good. Beau Brade from Maryland, I think I can say most of the same things about. I talked to Beau. I haven't written this story yet, but Beau is from Maryland, grew up in Maryland, grew up a Baltimore Ravens fan. Obviously, is a guy that idolized Ed Reed. Okay. And then he tells me in this interview that as he gets older and that he started to appreciate football a little more instead of just being a fan, he started to like Troy Polamalu a little bit more. All right. And right now, his favorite player in the NFL is Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Okay, all right. I like how you told that, too, because you brought me all the way around on him.
So he also friends with, Dino Tomlin from his time at Maryland. Not like necessarily super close, but, got to meet him and has a previous relationship with Mike Tomlin. So I think everyone is friends with Dino. I've yet to meet anyone that has ever played with Dino that is not friends with Dino. I think he's just one of those guys, and it's easy to envision Mike's son being like that. But Beau Brade is a guy I really like too, and I think he's probably a day 3 pick. Tykee Smith has been bouncing around a lot, all the way from like way high to the 2nd round to maybe down to the 5th. I think for me, he's like an end of day 2, beginning of day 3 guy, 3rd or 4th round. I think Brade is probably more like 5th or 6th round, or maybe that 4th or 5th round area. But there are a lot of guys like that I like here, man. That's just 2 I named, like Javon Bullard from Georgia, Malik Mustafa from Wake Forest, Simpson from Auburn, Cam Kitchens from Miami. Like, there's a lot of safeties here that are really good, and I think it's a really deep safety class. I don't think these are guys that are going to go in the 1st round for the most part. I think we both expect the Steelers to be offensive line heavy, and if they go defensive back early, it's going to be outside corner. But I think in the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round range, and the Steelers have 2 4th round picks, safety feels like a need, a fit, and you can, whether it's safety, whether it's slot corner, sometimes the guy's both, but somewhere in there, I think is a good player for them in this defense.
Somebody asked me about this, and not that, we're talking guys Senior Bowl here, but just exclusively looking at the class 2 in the slot corner position. We were talking about safety slot there, but when you're looking at corner slot options as well, Mike Sainristil at Michigan was somebody brought up to me. I put up a little clipped some stuff together from the college football playoffs and stuff. What are your thoughts on him as a player? Just because somebody asked me specifically about him.
Yeah, so he's injured. That's why he's not here. I guess he got banged up. I don't know if it happened in the national championship game or if it happened in the aftermath. These guys go straight from playing football to training for the combine, and it's a very different kind of exercise. And there's an awful lot of pulled hamstring, pulled groin kind of thing in that time frame that sometimes prevents guys from getting in here. So I'm not sure exactly what happened with him. He was one of the guys that was the most excited to see. I think he's a really interesting athlete. He hits hard for his size. But I mean, I would put him in that conversation. I think he's probably in the 3rd round range right now. We'll see, as things go forward. All these DBs, it will be very, very important how they run when we get to the combine. That is a make or break number for a defensive back. And so, very TBD on the order of these guys until we get there. I'm just talking about where they're basically kind of considered right now, but that can change a lot. And it will, depending on how guys perform over the next couple months.
I promised Chandler here, who asked us on YouTube, to get your thoughts on Utah safety Cole Bishop, because he's a Utah fan himself, and he intrigues him as a possible pick for the Steelers. How has he looked? Do you think that he would make sense as a possible sidekick to Minkah?
Yeah, I like Cole a lot. I talked to him after practice on the first day, and I talked to him about his physicality. I think it's, he's one of these guys that gets moving in a direction and he hits things hard. I think that's something very Steelers trait. Like, not to say that he's like absolutely going to be the same kind of player, but like I just see a little bit of Ryan Clark in his game. Like, he's a taller guy, a little bit lanky. He runs with that sort of like very forward leaning, like I'm just ready to hit something all the time kind of posture. And it's actually funny because in the Senior Bowl, you're not trying to like make Ryan Clark hits here, right? Like you're not trying to hurt anybody. But in fact, all during practice, you're practicing against the guys that are going to be on your team in the game at the end of the week. So you really don't want to go like blowing up your teammates. But I could just kind of see that he was one of those guys that was a little bit like, kind of like, God, just let me hit one of them one time. Like, and I think if you know anything about Utah, their defenses have a historic tendency to be very physical. And I think he lives up to that. He's not the biggest guy in the world. So maybe if I have a caution about Cole Bishop, it's like how well his body is going to hold up to that playing style, because he is a little bit reckless, and he's not, he's not Terrell Edmonds, right? Where like you could just be like, that guy could hit anything. He's a little bit of a smaller guy, so we'll see. And since you bring up Utah, Sione Vaki is one of the most intriguing guys here. Played running back and safety at Utah. He's been working as a safety here. I can't say he's like stood out in an incredible way in terms of just his like technical defensive back prowess, but the athlete is extremely intriguing. I think you may have an incredible special teamer if you get your hands on him, and then maybe you can turn him into something else down the way. I don't know. I'm very, very intrigued by him as well.
Yeah, and then the other player was a linebacker. So we're going to talk about this line. I want to ask you about the linebackers that were down there as well. If there was anybody that made sense for the Steelers. Although I guess I should bring up the player first, because then if you end up covering them, then I don't want to have to come back to the question. Because Berg Sports Fan just said, talk to me about Cedric Grey.
Cedric Grey is interesting. Not a guy that I had like a lot of expectations for coming in. I obviously covered Pitt, and so I'm familiar with most of the ACC players. And so I kind of knew what he was all about, and just in terms of kind of a coverage linebacker, not like the biggest guy in the world. Seems to fit with the Steelers, general mold, like kind of Quan Alexander type of body, right? And so I thought he was really good in coverage, man, especially in like difficult for linebacker situations, like coming forward and then the running back like comes out slow and then darts hard to the flat. Like you see a lot of bigger linebackers or lankier linebackers have difficulty with those change of directions. And I thought he looked really good. Pretty short tackler. He's not like a guy that hits so hard that it just like makes you, doesn't get your attention that way. Like maybe that's like what separates him from a guy like Quan Alexander that can really, really wallop you. Yeah. I think he's more of just a stable tackler than like a hitter. But he seems like a sure tackler, and he's a guy that I think is on the radar. Maybe if I was to give it like a Steelers player comp that maybe somebody might be familiar with, how about like a Larry Foote? Like just like a very like solid, good coverage, good tackler, not necessarily like the world's most violent guy. Didn't see a lot from him in pass rush, but just seemed like a guy that could cover up a lot as a linebacker.
Gotcha. And the guy that I want to know about, we can talk about this class as a whole, but me specifically, I had to ask you about Payton Wilson because that's my guy that's down there.
I really like watching Payton Wilson. I really like getting to talk to Payton Wilson, and I have a really good story with Payton Wilson, but I'm not going to give it away here. You just got to wait for it. You got to wait for it.
Okay.
But he does not look like any other linebacker I've ever seen. He looks like if a defensive end quit football and decided to play soccer instead. Like he's 6'5", he has long arms. Like he looks like he should have been TJ Watt, and then he just runs for days. And he's 235, 239. He was literally talking to me about like, well, I played at 235 and then I didn't feel as good, so then I went up to 238, and now I feel really good. I'm at 239 right now, but I'll get back to 238. I'm like, just in awe. I'm like, 4 pounds like that. I don't even notice 4 pounds coming and going. Like that's basically like it's not even here, So a scientist about his physique. He looks that he's not like he's lanky because he's so tall, and that weight. He really looks like a skinny guy, but he still hits hard because he is so fast. I think he's very powerful, and he covers really well, man. He is very fast, straight line. If you need a guy to run down the field, down the seam with a tight end, like the guy who should have been covering Dalton Kincaid, that's the guy. Like that's exactly like if you're specifically drafting to fix that problem, Payton Wilson is that solution. I don't know about like shedding guards. They don't do a lot of that kind of thing here. I think now he does have nice long arms, but I just wonder about his like overall strength. But like great to the flat, good zone defender and man-to-man defender. Really smart. Played middle linebacker here. Was calling all the plays with the green dot in his helmet and said, he really was like loving doing that. And it was like he's like as a kind of football nerd, like I was kind of in my element. He goes, I'm playing Madden with real people over here, like, and I think it was a great conversation. I'm really intrigued by him as a player. I don't know how the league is going to look at him because he just does not look like other guys. I can't even give you like a real player comp that I feel good about. Like I don't know. They don't build them like that. And so I think on one hand, unique can be really good, but sometimes unique can be scary for teams. And so I don't know what that is going to mean for his value, whether teams are going to see what I'm seeing and see this piece that could be extremely useful for a pass defense, especially, or if they're going to go like, well, he doesn't look like anybody I know that's been successful. So how do I know he's going to be successful? And then assign more risk to him as a player. I think I've seen him in the 5th round some. I would be comfortable with him there, but I don't know exactly where he's going to go.
He's in Daniel Jeremiah's top 50.
I know. Like, there's a very wide discrepancy about him, and I think it is just because he is so unique.
There's not a blueprint already.
Yeah. I do have one, but it's very old, and the player didn't turn out to be very good. But you have to remember, the NFL is quite different. Also, another guy that I think if you get him would be an elite special teams player right away. I mean, day one, I'd love to see that guy cover kickoffs. Holy heck.
So when you look at the makeup right now of the Steelers linebacker room, and we don't actually know, like we don't know if Quan Alexander's going to be back. Cole Holcomb coming back from the injury that he is. Elandon Roberts will be back. You got Mark Robinson, obviously, the guys they brought in at the end of the year. If any of them will be back, like very much in limbo what's going to happen in this room. Is there a guy down there that you're like, yep, this guy could make sense in the Steelers linebacking group next year?
I think Payton Wilson is the one that I really do think makes sense.
Okay.
Great. Not to say that it won't happen or that it couldn't happen, but I think right now I would operate under the assumption that Quan Alexander won't be back.
Okay.
It's hard to sign guys to 1-year contracts and that have significant injury history. You lose them and then you don't get to replace them, and it's tough. I just don't know. I don't know what they're going to want to do there, but Holcomb is going to be healthy. E-Rob will be healthy. I think those are the starters, and then Mark Robinson will be back. I thought he played better towards the end of the year. I think will be in a better position to contribute if they need him to. But I really think the thing that's missing is a true coverage linebacker, somebody that can go do some different things. When they're playing these teams that don't really want to run the ball. I think E-Rob and Cole Holcomb are great for the Ravens and the Browns, but I'm not sure they're the best for Dalton Kincaid, right? I'm not sure they're the best for, even though the 49ers do run a lot, George Kittle, right? And I think having somebody like that is really a weakness, and I think Payton Wilson is a guy that can fill that role. There are some other guys. The second of the two teams, I really dislike their practice format. I feel like I didn't get to see any of them. There were a couple linebackers on that squad that I wanted to see, but I think that there's also Jeremiah Trotter from Clemson is not here. Is sort of the top linebacker in terms of like if you wanted to get a guy that would shore up the position long term, Roberts and Holcomb 1 and 2 years left on their deals. If you wanted to get a guy that's like, okay, here's the future of the position and we'll lock it up for a couple of years, I think that's the move. I'm not sure there's more than 1 or 2 of those, though. It doesn't seem like it's a very deep linebacker class to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And maybe that is the answer to the last question that I wanted to ask you just about the Senior Bowl as a whole, kind of wrapping things up here. What is your, overwhelming takeaway from the Senior Bowl? Like, I'm not asking about the draft class specifically, but I just want to know about the Senior Bowl right now. We're talking about the draft down the line. Like, do you think that the people were there, that the Steelers got a good look at, kind of fit what they needed? Or, like, how do you think that the class that was down there kind of went along with what the Steelers' needs are?
I think it was exactly what I expected it to be. I think it was a lot of offensive linemen. The offensive linemen here were great. In fact, there were some guys that I didn't necessarily think were that good coming in that I feel better about now. So I think it's a very deep offensive line class, especially at tackle and center, which are the Steelers' needs. I feel even more sure than before that I think we're going to see, probably 2 of their top 3 picks be offensive line at tackle and center. And I think they're going to have good players there because I really like this group of linemen that was here. There's obviously the top 2 tackles that weren't here. It's a very strong offensive line group from Mobile, and I think a lot of those guys made themselves a lot of headway. And very interestingly, and I'm curious about this because I didn't really pay much attention because I know it's not a need. Like the Steelers only have like 3 positions that I could basically just cross off from the very beginning, and that was really running back and edge rusher and kicker. Like pretty much everybody else was on an option. And yeah, they could probably use like a late round guy at either of those positions, but I don't think the edge rushers here were very good, and I don't think anybody really jumped out. I mean, the guy from USC is a really good player, and he's going to go in the first round, but I thought these tackles handled them very well. And so if you're a team that's looking for an edge rusher, I don't think you found what you were looking for. But the good news for the Steelers is they weren't really looking. And so I think this class line.
Same with tight end, right? We didn't really talk about tight end either.
Yeah, Theo Johnson from Penn State had a nice week. Brevin Spanford from Minnesota. There are a couple guys that I thought showed, like Theo looks like a guy that was maybe a little underutilized at Penn State, just based on the way he was like his athletic profile. I think he probably could have done more. He really looks the part, man. I mean, he looks like Travis Kelce out there, like not in terms of like maybe the explosiveness as a runner, but just like the athleticism and he's a good player. I think I just don't know that tight end is a need for the Steelers.
Yeah.
I kind of, I mean, they don't really need a tight end, so I don't know what they're going to do if they're going to try to add one, but I wasn't really watching them that close either. But I thought this was a solid tight end group. To, the additions of the juniors, I think, didn't really change a lot for me. I thought it was a good move by the NFL to do it, even though it kind of bucks tradition. But the one thing I heard a lot this week is that it pushed some guys out at the bottom, and that combined with like NIL now, meaning like fewer juniors than ever coming into the draft process. I think guys are concerned about day 3. I think there's some draft boards that look a little thin compared to where they had the last couple of years in terms of like having enough guys that they value at those picks. I think you can see some teams trade out of the 3rd round, looking at next year maybe, or trying to move up very aggressively. I think it's going to be a lot of competition if you want to move up on day 3, because I think a lot of teams are thinking the same thing there.
That's interesting. Yeah, honestly, that thought hadn't crossed my mind, but obviously it's going to be
there now. I did write
now.
about that too. There's a story on the site there. I talked with Jim Nagy about it a little bit, but it's an interesting part of this process. Steelers with those 2 fourths, I think, are in a good spot there early on day 3. Somebody does want to move up, maybe they can get a pretty good haul.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
I already did. I'm in Washington Park in Mobile. A Saunders _PGH on Twitter, PGH Steelers Now, and SteelersNow.com. And like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. There will be 500 interviews from the Senior Bowl and from the Shrine Bowl over the last week that get published to this channel. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, you get the bell for notifications, and you find out every time we drop a new interview. The one with Beau Brade will be coming, the one with Payton Wilson will be coming, and a lot of these other guys, Cedric Grey, they're all coming, and it's going to be a ton of football content here leading up to the draft.
All right. Well, the Payton Wilson's the one that I'm looking forward to. So yeah, I got, just like everybody else, I also will have make sure that I got that bell hit, so I get a notification when that's posted.
If they draft Payton Wilson, will you get a perm instead of the mustache? You could get a little perm going.
I hope that this proved. I hope that this right here proved to the people. There were some people in my life already that were very well aware, that understand there is nothing that I won't do, depending on the situation. So absolutely, I will do whatever I have to do with my hair if it means Payton Wilson is going to become a Steeler.
All right, we'll see if we can make that happen.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments with any questions for when we come back next week. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. For Alan Saunders, I'm Zachary Smith, PGH. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.